Over the years, the Chinese have been making fairly bland motorcycles. It's always been a copy of a Japanese bike, and it had to be reliable and cheap to manufacture. Now, 2 years ago, a company by the name of Zontes decided that it was okay to paint a motorcycle bright orange, and they gave us the ZT310-X, and that was a bike that I reviewed as well. Last year, they gave us an arrestingly good looking bike, the ZT310R. And that was a cheeky little bike because a certain German manufacturer also released a 310R. Well, this year they upped the ante even more with the 310X. Let's have a look at the specifications on this bike. The engine is a 312cc single cylinder engine, double overhead cam. It pushes out 26 kilowatts at 9,500 RPMs. It delivers 30 Newton meters of torque at 7,500. The bike weighs in at 155 kilograms wet and has a quite substantial fuel tank capacity of 15 liters. That means that with the claimed fuel consumption, you should get a range of over 400 kilometers on a tank. The claimed top speed is 160 kilometers per hour, but this bike was still new, so I didn't try that. The 310R was already a gorgeous motorcycle, and this one just takes it that little step further. The front of this bike is styled almost like the Kawasaki H2. The indicators are neatly integrated into the fairing. The fuel tank has the now familiar Zontes fuel flap, which is released by a button on the handlebar. The dash is now a larger LCD than on the other two, the S250 and the 310. It even has a USB charging port. The bike has frame sliders here. I think they're frame sliders. They're not going to be of much use because they don't extend further than the fairing, so the fairing will probably stop the frame slider from getting hurt. Moving to the back of the bike, this twin exhaust is very sporty. It makes the bike look sporty enough, and the tail kicks up like a sport bike should. And even on the rims, they have these angular highlights. As with all 310 models in the Zontes range, this one comes with keyless go. Now, I've never been a fan of keyless entry because the fob is always missing and always looking for it. But for such a small capacity bike, this is a rather upmarket feature. The front screen is adjustable through a button, and it only has two settings, whether you want the wind on your chest or a little bit higher up on your chest. The buttons on this bike is fairly crowded. There's quite a lot of buttons here and quite a lot going on, and there's even an echo button here, which I still haven't figured out how that affects the motorcycle's performance. As far as the ergonomics go, you sit fairly low in this motorcycle. The seat is low, it's wide and it's plush, but it lacks a bit of grip. You tend to move around on this bike, especially under hard braking, but once you're on the move and you go through corners, being able to move around on the seat is a big plus. Also, the handlebars are fairly narrow, and that aids with your lane splitting. The mirrors on this bike is mounted on this solid piece of metal, and unfortunately they don't extend far enough out to look past my elbows. But all in all, the ergonomics on this bike is fairly relaxed, and you can go on a fairly extended trip without it being a pain in the proverbial. But now we come to the all-important performance question. And this is where this motorcycle really excelled. I've ridden a fair amount of 300s last year and the year before that, and this one is right up there. It doesn't have to back off 1 inch to the other motorcycles. In fact, this motorcycle pushes out 1 kilowatt more and 1 Newton meter of torque more than its German rival. Also, I think this motorcycle is slightly faster than the BMW 310R. Yesterday I went riding with a bunch of friends of mine, and they were all on larger capacity motorcycles, and I managed to keep up with them. But at no point did this motorcycle feel at all strained to maintain highway speeds and more. The engine does get a bit buzzy at high revs, but that is to be expected from a single cylinder engine, and that is unfortunately something that befalls all the 300s that I've tested so far. I've had this bike now for just under a week now, and I must admit that I was fairly impressed with the build quality on this bike. The paint quality is good, the fit and finish on everything is good. Even things like this, the grab handle at the back, when you feel it, it feels solid. It's not something cheap and nasty from a wheelie bin or something. The motorcycle is really well put together. So if you are in the market for a 300cc motorcycle to do a lot of commuting with, then the Zontes ZT310X makes a strong case, because this is a motorcycle that not only looks good, but goes just as well.